The wallet test. The coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but Claire Whitfield hadn't touched it once. Across the small table by the window, the man fidgeted with his hands, glancing at the check the waiter had quietly left between them, and for the 11th time in 3 months, she watched a man's face change the instant money entered the conversation. She had $11 million sitting in a bank account under a name nobody at this table knew, and she had worn the same thrifted blouse, the same scuffed flats, and the same carefully rehearsed story about being a laid-off receptionist barely making rent. She did this every time. She needed to know before she ever let herself feel anything whether a man could look at a woman with nothing and still choose to stay. If you believe in second chances, if you believe kindness still exists even when nobody's watching, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Enlightened Story so you never miss a story like this one. Claire was the CEO of Whitfield Logistics, a shipping empire her late father had built from a single truck into a fleet that crossed 3 continents. She had inherited the company at 26 when a heart attack took him in his sleep. And in the 7 years since, she had learned exactly one brutal lesson about wealth. It made her invisible as a person and painfully visible as a target. Men smiled at her balance sheet long before they smiled at her. Investors wanted partnerships. Suitors wanted access. So she built herself a second identity, a woman named Claire Monroe who worked retail and struggled to make ends meet. And she went on date after date as that woman, watching, waiting, hoping someone would prove her wrong about the world. That night, the man across from her, a junior account manager named Ryan, had stared at the check like it was a venomous snake. When the bill came to $34, he'd mumbled something about forgetting his wallet at the office, and his eyes had drifted to her purse with an expectation so casual it made her stomach turn. She paid. She always paid in the end because she needed proof. And that night, walking home alone under street lights that buzzed and flickered, she promised herself this would be the last blind date she ever arranged. 3 weeks later, a coworker mentioned a single father named Marcus Bennett, who picked up extra shifts fixing cars at a garage 2 blocks from her office. A man who'd been raising his 8-year-old daughter alone since his wife passed from an illness that drained every cent he'd ever saved. Claire almost said no. She was tired of being disappointed, tired of pretending to be poor, only to discover how ugly people became when they thought poverty made her worthless. But something about the way her coworker described him, gentle, exhausted, devoted, made her agree to one more date, on one more rainy Tuesday evening, at a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and fried onions. Marcus showed up 15 minutes early. He wore a clean but clearly old jacket, the cuffs frayed at the edges, and he apologized twice for the gas in his truck, smelling like motor oil because he'd come straight from the garage without time to change. He didn't ask what she did for work right away. Instead, he asked if she'd eaten that day, really eaten, because he could tell from the way she ordered the cheapest thing on the menu that she might be skipping meals to save money. And something in his voice wasn't pity. It was concern, plain and unguarded. When the check came, he reached for it immediately. Claire, playing her part, said softly that she could only afford to split it, bracing herself for the flicker of irritation she'd seen so many times before. Instead, Marcus simply nodded and said that was more than fair. And then he quietly slid $2 extra toward her side without making a show of it, saying she should get herself dessert because everyone deserved something sweet once in a while, even when money was tight. He wasn't performing generosity for an audience. He genuinely believed she had nothing, and he gave anyway. Over the following weeks, Claire kept testing him almost cruelly, telling him her car had been repossessed, that she'd had to choose between paying rent and buying her own medication, watching for any sign of withdrawal. Each time, Marcus responded not with judgment, but with quiet, practical kindness, offering to drive her places in his battered truck, bringing extra groceries his daughter Lily had insisted on packing because, in Lily's words, sharing food made it taste better. He never once asked Claire for anything. He never once made her feel like a burden for needing help. And the more she lied to him, the more ashamed she became, because Marcus Bennett, a man with maybe $400 to his name after bills, treated a supposedly broke stranger with more dignity than men worth 6 figures ever had. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon when Lily got a fever, and Marcus, panicking, called Claire only because she was the closest person he trusted, asking if she knew anything about kids' medicine. Without thinking, she rushed to his apartment. And when she arrived, she found him sitting on the floor beside his daughter's bed, counting coins from a jar to see if he had enough for the pharmacy. He hadn't asked Claire for a cent. He was simply doing the math out loud, exhausted, terrified, trying to figure out how to be enough. In that moment, watching this man who had nothing give everything he had to a child who depended on him completely, Claire felt something inside her crack open, something that had been sealed shut since the day her father died and left her alone with his money and his name. She paid for the medicine before he noticed, claimed she'd had cash from selling an old phone, and sat with him through the night while Lily's fever broke. And somewhere in those quiet hours, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and a space heater that rattled every few minutes, Claire Whitfield, CEO of a logistics empire, realized she had finally found what she'd been searching for in 11 failed dates. A man who didn't need money to know how to love someone well. She never told Marcus who she really was, not completely. Not even after they married 2 years later in a small backyard ceremony with Lily as the flower flower girl. She simply quietly paid off his garage's debts under an anonymous donation, funded Lily's education through a scholarship trust nobody could trace back to her, and let Marcus keep believing for the rest of his life that he had married a woman just as ordinary as himself. Because to Claire, that was the whole point. He never loved her money. He loved her. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you that real love has nothing to do with what's in someone's wallet, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs that reminder today. And before you go, I'd love for you to comment one word that describes what kindness means to you. I read every single one. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep believing in second chances.